Hi everyone, this is Dr. Compton, and today I'm going to go through how to use a resource called Inspire that provides databases where you can access sources for your upcoming research paper. I recommend, if you can, watching the video on one device and then using a different device to kind of follow along with me. Otherwise, I recommend, instead of watching the video straight through, if you're just using one device, pause it when I get to a certain point, then do what I just did, and then go back to the video, unpause it, watch some more, pause it again, and then keep, so that you can kind of follow along the same way you would if you had a device set up where you could watch the video, and a second device where you can actually do what I'm doing. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy. Definitely follow the recommendations that you hear the experts talking about. This is serious, but we're going to get through it and everything's going to be okay. I haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime. My parents haven't seen anything like this in their lifetimes. My grandparents didn't see anything like this in their lifetimes. I have a grandfather that was born in 1918, which was the last time something like this happened, so over like 102 years ago. So I know it's scary and it's weird and it's throwing everything off, but we're going to get through it. But definitely take it seriously, because it is serious. So now we're at Inspire, and it might look a little differently if you're using your iPad. You won't see these links right here. Instead, there's going to be like this green stack of pancakes, these three little green lines, and when you click on it, it will make these options available to you. And I'm going to look at two different databases today. One is called Points of View Reference Center, which has sources in it, but it's not the greatest place to find sources, but it helps you with the research process, and you'll see how in a minute. And the other one is called Gale Science in Context, and I'm just showing you it as an example of a Gale database. So if you go through, there are several Gale databases that are probably useful to you, and all of them have, or almost all of them have, the same functions and looks the same or similar to Science in Context. And I'm going to show you the functions in all of these, and how they work, and how they help you save your work, and help you organize the research process. Also, the Discovery Education Board will be useful to you. So now that we're at Inspire, probably a good idea to have paused it at this point, go to the website, and then see what I'm doing, then pause it again, do what I just did, follow along. That old chestnut that I just talked about already. So we know the names of the databases we're going to use. There's a search function in Inspire and I don't recommend using it. You can try it if you want, but anybody that tries it usually has some difficulty, because you get an overwhelming number of results, because it goes through all of the databases in here, and there are a lot of databases you'll see. And you got databases are divided by subjects, but since I know the database name, I'm going to go to A to Z. And it's called Points of View Reference Center, so I can just scroll through until I get to the P's. And here's a little pro tip: if you are working with a PC, you can click Control F, and it brings this little search box up. If you're working with an Apple computer, it would be Command F, and then I type in Points of View Reference Center, and it pulls it up for me, or it goes to that link. And Points of View Reference Center has a search function in it. Again, I don't recommend using the search functions. And then you've got a bunch of topics here, and they're divided into categories. And if the categories have more than 3 topics in them, you click more and it expands those additional topics in that category, or you can just click see all. And you can see there are many topics in here, and they're alphabetical. So I'm going to go to something fairly relevant here currently. I'm going to go to the Ebola quarantine restrictions. There's some stuff going on right now that's pretty similar to this topic, and some arguments out in the news addressing a similar topic. Well, it's pretty much the same topic, except it's a different disease. We've had issues with Ebola in the past, several years, and it didn't impact us as dramatically as this, but a lot of these questions were raised then. So when you open up an article or a topic in Points of View Reference Center, it goes to an overview of the topic, kind of laying it out, giving you an introduction, understanding the discussion, history of it, all that good stuff. Then you've got related items over here, and you've got tools. Now, these are the things that make this such a great resource, because it helps you with the research process. So under related items, you've got research guides, which just give you general information on how to do research that aren't specific to this topic. So how to choose a topic, evaluate a website, understand bias. And then related items, you've got point, counterpoint, and then guide to critical analysis. So if you click on point, it opens up a new window, and it gives you one perspective on this topic. So hence the name Points of View Reference Center. It gives you different points of view on a topic. So the main point that they're presenting is protecting the public from disease is paramount. So what it is, this article is, or this point of view is saying, is that quarantine restrictions are necessary. The thesis: individual state governments must have the discretion to take extreme measures to protect the public from diseases that have the potential to become deadly epidemics, such as Ebola, especially when voluntary self-monitoring for potential illness is difficult to enforce. Then it gives you the talking points, these main concepts in this perspective. The decisive action must be taken to serve the needs of frightened citizens is a talking point for this. A kind of summary of it, or a summary of it, and then ponder this. So things to think about regarding this perspective. The author has presented some fundamental positions for this perspective, outline the strengths and weaknesses of each perspective. So you can see how this will be useful, especially if you have this topic. It gets you thinking ahead of time, and it gives you some prompts to, and even some questions to ask yourself as you're going through it. This is all stuff you're going to have to do anyway on your own. This resource helps you do that. Even if you don't choose one of these topics, I recommend you just pick one and look through it, and look through all of these functions in it, and all of these options that you have, the point, counterpoint, guide to critical analysis. Because if you ask a lot of these same questions about your topic, it will help you think ahead of time and think through it better. You might wonder, well, why would I put all this extra work in? Like, I already have to find the sources, read them, pull out the information I need, put it into my own words, develop my own paper on it. Like, you're adding more steps that I don't need to do. Well, by adding these steps, then it's going to make it easier for you, and you're going to save time. It's like when you're studying, you don't just jump into the textbook and start reading it. You look at the table of contents, you look at the glossary, you look at the headings and subheadings and notes that are written, so that what you're about to read gets mapped out in your mind. So it's like, instead of walking into a forest not knowing where you're going, having a map ahead of time to guide you through it. Does that make sense? Good. So then you got counterpoint. And counterpoint is an argument against the main point. So the argument against the kind of pro-quarantine options is government response to Ebola is not based on facts. So fear, ignorance, and political posturing often drive the stringent regulations placed on persons returning from countries with disease epidemics, and in the case of healthcare workers, deter them from traveling to inflicted countries to offer them assistance. So again, you've got talking points, you've got a summary, you've got to ponder this, and this also provides you sources. That's another tip, is to when you get a source, look at their bibliography or references and see if you can find those sources. That's a way to keep digging more deeply into the topic. There might be things that aren't addressed in this article that get addressed in these articles that are referenced. So you got your point, counterpoint. To me, that is the backbone of critical thought and analysis, is addressing a main point and counterpoints to it, and then responding to those counterpoints. So when you write your paper, you present your thesis and you establish your argument for that thesis, but then you address weaknesses in it. So arguments against it or possible weaknesses. So, here's my thesis. Here's my argument for it. However, according to so-and-so, that's not the case because, and then you cite, the argument against it and address it and say, on the other hand, that's not true because, and you just keep going back and forth like that until you've established that your argument is correct and you write your conclusion. You might think, well, why would I want to address possible weaknesses in it? I'm wanting to convince people that I'm right. Well, the way you do that is address the weaknesses and kind of patch them up and show that they're not really a problem or that they're false, so that you make your argument stronger. I think of it as like what goes on in a courtroom. You've got two defense teams. Each sits down with their client and grills their client on what the opposition is going to ask them. And that way, when their client gets on the stand, they're ready for those questions and have an answer ready. So that strengthens their case when they do that. That's what you're doing in your paper. And this will help you with your everyday life. This will help you with what's going on now and avoiding fake news and arguments you get into it with people about things that you're passionate about. You'll think many steps ahead of the average person, because most people get locked into their own perspective and don't think outside of it. They don't take into account what other people's views are on it and possible problems with what they're thinking. And so this will make you smarter and keep you much more up on things than other people. And knowing all these research skills will do the same. So this is important not just for school. This is for your everyday life, and it will help you navigate the world a lot better. So hopefully, if you're just using one device, again, reminder, I wouldn't watch this straight through. I would pause it, follow along with me, then come back to the video. And if you're using two devices, hopefully you're following along with me. Now, next, guide to critical analysis. So this goes even deeper into the critical thought and analysis, of which I said the backbone is addressing the points, counterpoints, the arguments for and against, and going back and forth like that. So you also have this guide to critical analysis that gives you things to think about before you read. So I recommend reading this before you read anything, including the overview and the points and counterpoints. So you got a before you read. In a single sentence, state what you currently think is or are the arguments in the Ebola quarantine restrictions debate. And you've got an as you read. Reading all three essays will enable you to better understand the controversy, providing a foundation for which you can broaden your knowledge of the topic. You've got judging facts from opinions. It kind of tells you what the difference between facts and opinions are. Lays out examples of facts and opinions and why one thing is a fact and one thing is an opinion. You decide, gives you some questions to ask. So you get all these questions and prompts, debate questions you can ask. Once again, you might think, why would I add all of this work to something that's already a lot of work? writing this paper, finding all this information for my research. Doing all of this ahead of time, it's going to map it out in your mind so that when you get into the material and start writing and creating an outline, you will be much better prepared, and it will make it easier, and it will actually save you time. Then over here you've got tools. So this will help you with your organizing of your paper. And before I do that, I'll just give some little tips here. So I'm going to go to Google Drive, and I'm going to create a folder. So I recommend you do this. This is one simple way to organize your research. If you're using an iPad, then this is going to look a little differently, but there should be somewhere this multicolored plus button. If I click on that, I can create folders and documents. I can upload files or folders. I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it My Research. And then I'm going to open it. And then I'm going to click the new button again and create a Google Doc in here. And I will also name this My Research. So whenever you're doing research, you need to find a way to organize the information that you collect. If you were just collecting physical documents, you need to create a physical folder and put the documents in that. If you're saving everything on your actual computer, you have to create a file on your or a folder on your computer and store documents in it. Now that we have the cloud, we've got OneDrive for Microsoft, we've got Google Drive. These are ways to store and organize the information that you collect. And one simple thing that I do is I create a document like this, and I put in any notes I take from articles and I put that into the Google Doc. So let's say I'm going to use this article for my research. I'm going to copy and paste it into my document. I'm going to paste it without formatting, and there are hotkeys for this, like Control-Shift-V or Command-Shift-V if you're using a Mac. And I want to make sure I know that this is the title, so I'm going to underline it. And then any notes that I take, or anything that I want to copy and paste, I would put with this, and I'd make sure that I'd put a lot of space between information I collect from one article and information I collect from another article, so that I don't get them mixed up. And since this is a direct quote, I want to make sure I don't confuse myself later and wind up using direct quotes that I think are my own notes and wind up committing plagiarism. I'll put quotation marks around this to distinguish them from my notes and to distinguish them from my notes. So if I wanted to save this article so I can access it later and not just have notes and quotes from it, I could just link to it. This is important. You cannot link back to it by copying and pasting the URL in the address bar. So repeat, the URL in the address bar does not work to link back to this article. You have to go to, under Tools, Permalink, and then it opens a permanent link to it. So I will copy and paste that. And this way I can get back to it later. Again, this address up here, this URL in this address bar does not work on any of the Gale database sources that you come up with. You have to find some function in the database that lets you get this permanent link. And the Gale databases have that as well. You can also email it to yourself, or you can send it to Google Drive. I was excited to see that they created a Google Drive option on Points of View Reference Center. It didn't have that before. But unfortunately, when it does, it's not all that great. It looks like they're kind of working on it right now. So I'll show you it nevertheless. So I'm going to click on it, and it'll ask you to sign into your Google Drive or verify your Google account. Since I've already done this with this database, it did it automatically for me, so you didn't see that. But if it asks you to verify, your Google address or Google account or log into it, go ahead and do that. And it says that my document has been saved to my Google account. So I'm going to go to Google Drive, and it's created a folder for me. And like I said, it's not that great. Let me refresh this. Yeah. So you can see I've got my files there. Here it is, the Ebola quarantine restrictions, and it created a folder which I can't find. But the folder is going to be called EBSCO because Points of View Reference Center is an EBSCO database, the company EBSCO. And I'm still not seeing it. So let's I'm going to right click on this and click File, Show File Location. You're seeing some real-time problem solving here. Oh, okay, that's because I deleted that. See, that's just crazy. So I restored it, and so there it is, the EBSCO folder, and there's the article. Now watch when I click on it. It's a bunch of HTML. That's because it's saving it as a web page. So if you save this to your computer and opened it, it would open in a web page that would just be connected to your computer. It wouldn't be like, an actual web page on the internet. So that function isn't very useful in this, but hopefully down the road they will fix that. So that's Points of View Reference Center. And that's how a lot of the EBSCO databases work. And I'm not saying limit, your use of these databases to just Points of View Reference Center and Gale databases, or just the Gale database that I show you. I'm just showing you these as examples. And if I can find it, I will send out. I'll send an email to Mrs. Gonzalez that will that tells you what databases I think are probably the most useful. So the next database I'm going to look for is Gale Science in Context, and Gale keeps changing how they order the words in the title of their in the names of their databases. So I'm going to hit Control F and click and type in Gale and just go through all the Gales. Well, first thing it came to was Science in Context. So Science, Gale in Context. Let's open it. And this is what most of the Gale databases look like. So you've got a search function here. And if you guys need help with your search strategies or using advanced search, let me know. I don't want this video to get overwhelmingly long for you. And hopefully, again, just a reminder, I hope you're pausing as I show you something if you're using just one device, so that you can kind of follow along with me and then pull up the video again and keep watching. Otherwise, it's best if you have two devices and you can watch the video while I'm showing you. So you've got topics, and they're organized into categories, and it tells you the number of topics within those categories. If you click on the category, it'll open them all up, and you can click Browse All Topics. And why don't we just look at COVID-19, see what comes up there. So when you open up a topic, it shows you what sources are available. You got websites, audio, video, magazines, academic journals, reference. You're going to want to look for something that's full text. Some of these sources are just citations, or they are summaries, abstracts that are just small summaries of the article. That's not going to be very useful to you. If you come across one of those, let me know if you think it's really going to be useful to you, and I'll see if I can find it elsewhere. Otherwise, you're going to want to find something that's full text. And you can see there's some guides here that tell you how difficult it is. You've got your lexile and these different colored rectangles with the more dots, white dots that are in the colored rectangle, the more difficult it is. And again, there's the lexile number on them. So just kind of pick them accordingly. And let's open up a source. And this is full text. So that's good. And then, so how am I going to save this and organize it? Well, again, I'm going to copy and paste the title into my paper or my notes, and I want to make sure I put a lot of space between one source and the other source. And I want to make sure I know this is the title, so I'm going to underline it. Now we've got these options up here. Let's say I want to take notes and highlight stuff. So I've got this up here. The way to do that is I select something, and now I can highlight it. I can define it. If it's like one word or a phrase, I click define. There's a dictionary in here that will look that up. Or I can take notes. If I click on notes, it automatically highlights it. Then I can type in any notes that I want to make, and then I'll click save, and it's saved for me. And you can get your citation here, which includes a permalink to it. So you can select it, copy, and then paste it. Then up here, and then you can also get the permalink with get link. So you're not seeing me like right clicking. I'm using hotkeys. So I'm using Control V or Control Shift V to remove the formatting. If you remove the formatting on your citation, then that's going to kind of screw up your citation. So it's not perfect. And I can download it to my computer, or I can send it to myself either to my Google Drive, my OneDrive, or through email. And I've also got these icons down here that offer those options, but I want to send it to my Gmail account. That just seems like the easiest thing to do since we all have Google apps. So I'm going to click on it, and you'll get like a pop-up that if you haven't used this before, that's going to ask you to log into your Google account or verify your Google account. And since I've already used this and it's recognizing my login, then it's doing it automatically for me. So it's been sent to my Google Drive, and it creates a folder like the EBSCO folder for Points of View Reference Center, except Gale does a lot better job of this. So let's go back to it. I've got Gale Science and Context, and it's orange, so it stands right out. It's right on top. And then if I open it, here's the article: How Social Distancing Combats COVID-19. And you see I took notes in those on a certain section, and that was highlighted. And if I scroll down to the bottom, it shows me what I highlighted and the notes that I took. So you can see that's a really helpful way to organize and take notes in addition to your document here. And if you want to send this article to, remember, my research, I'm saving everything in there. I probably want to put my article in there rather than leaving it in the database folder, Gale, the Science and Context folder. So the way I do that is, if it's my computer, I could go to, I can, open up all of my folders over here and then drag and drop it, into there. Or I can right click it and then click Move To. And then I'm going to go back to my drive and I'm going to look for my research. And now I'm going to move it there. And then when I open up my research again, I've got my notes and I've got this article. So that's about it. Remember, the Gale databases, most of them look the same. You can kind of scroll through and try to find which ones say Gale on them. If you're using computer, you can use hotkeys like Control F or Command F and type in Gale. And in this presentation, I talked about how you can use Inspire, which is inspire.in.gov, to access free databases and collect sources from them. The first database was Points of View Reference Center, which has sources, but it's most useful in its ability to help you with your research process. And I showed you some of the ways that it does. It gives you points and counterpoints. It helps you with your critical thought and analysis. Even if you're not using any of the topics on there, I think if you look at how it helps you do research on those topics, it can kind of guide you through your own topic. And I showed you, how to create a document and use it to gather information and organize it. And I showed you some of the tools in Points of View Reference Center that help you save the article through permalinks and send it to your Google Drive. And I showed you the same thing on the Gale database called Gale Science and Context. So that's all I've got for you guys. I hope to see you soon. Looks like it might be a while before I do. So again, stay safe and listen to the experts. Take care.